It's time for Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW. This is the place to be for news and analysis around Penn State football, basketball, and all 29 other sports. Call the show at 814-272-9625. That's 814-272-9625. Now, here's your hosts of Blue and White Breakdown, Matt Bortner and Zach Seyko.
How much money does Penn State football need to compete with some of the best programs in the country? Well, we're going to address that today and more. Penn State softball head coach Clarisa Crowell joins the show at 5:15. A recruiting flip for Penn State football. Well, no.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way.
I guess technically, though, they did get one in,
that is
in
true.
a good way.
An eye for an eye in this case, as Penn State does pick up one for the class of 2023 and loses one as well. We're going to debate which one's more important. How does it affect the class? It's all right here on Blue and White Breakdown. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. We want you to get in on the conversation as well. 272-9625, 272-9625. The phone lines are open. Blue and White Breakdown is sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and BMW. Shop Joel Confer Toyota and BMW 24/7 at joelconfer.com. We went to Penn State media availability last week, and it was gorgeous out. I bet the construction workers thought so as well, and there were a variety of topics covered about specific players from James Franklin, and then you could meet with the coaches, all the assistant coaches individually. But James Franklin, in about 20 minutes, addressed a bunch of different things. NIL was one of them, and we're going to play a soundbite, 2-minute soundbite, in that exact spot. But what were your takeaways from James Franklin's pseudo press conference, if you will?
I don't think there was anything major to be taken away here. I mean, we'll get to the NIL issue. I think he's been, at least since he signed his new contract, he's been pretty adamant on those things, that's what Penn State needs to succeed. But there were a couple good news and notes for Penn State in terms of guys coming back from injury and those things. But I don't think, in terms of anything you're seeing on the field, nothing that should be of concern at this point.
Yeah, he talked about P.J. Mustipher, Chop, Damian Robinson. I think he's going to go by Chop. Did you have a preference between Chop and Damian?
I mean, whatever you want to go by, I guess.
As long as he gets sacks, as long as he makes big plays on the defensive side of things. He's officially enrolled. They mentioned Abdul Carter, some of the other new guys walking around and everything. But I thought it was promising that P.J. Mustipher, it sounds like he's working so hard that he's ahead of schedule, and Penn State has to tell him to reel it back.
Yeah, he's an ultra competitor, and honestly, he is. Okay, yes, you get Damian Robinson in, who is a huge transfer for what Penn State is going to do on defense this year. But getting P.J. Mustipher back and healthy, anywhere near his former self, I think is pretty vital for Penn State's success on defense, especially in stopping the run. He was one of the best when healthy last year before the Iowa injury, one of the best defensive tackles in the Big Ten last year, and maybe one of the best in the country. So getting him back and healthy is huge because of also the type of leader he is. You always hear the teammates talk about P.J. Mustipher.
The defense definitely lost a step after he went down and had to be relegated to a scooter the remainder of the season. So people think that Sean Clifford's injury was kind of the biggest knock on the team last year. And honestly, the second Mustipher went down, I felt like that was, you just watched the Michigan State game and you could tell, like, man, he's needed here in more ways than just one, rather than his tackles on the football field, but the emotional presence. Yeah. Everybody looks up to P.J. Mustipher. So having him back is huge in more ways than one. Again, later on the show, we're going to talk about some recruiting that happened on the trail. Penn State picks up a player. They also lose one, and that happened today, losing that player to Georgia. We'll go into detail about that. But here's a soundbite. It's about 2 minutes of an exchange between the Penn State reporters and James Franklin about NIL and what Penn State needs to compete with Ohio State particularly, but other top programs like Alabama and such. Take a listen.
Going back to the last question on NIL, one number that's out there is $13 million a year for roster management. Are you saying that Penn State needs more than that?
I guess the question is, I don't know what schools you're talking about, but if we want to compete with the schools that you guys all write articles about us competing with, why wouldn't our number be the same as others?
James, going back to the summer, is there something that you specifically do?
I guess explain that. At some point, can we do this where we flip it around? And I can ask questions like, if school X we're supposed to be competing with,
well, the number
if school X has a number and we're supposed to be competing with school X, why would our number be different? And so let's do this at some point. Let's flip it around. Cameras on you. I'm sorry.
Going back to the summer, is there something specifically you do to reset, recharge mentally, emotionally, physically before you get into camp in the season?
I can't get off this. If you guys could, message me. Send me a message on why our numbers would be different than the people we're supposed to keep competing. Explain that to me. I don't get it.
Well, that number
recharge it. Huh?
That number seemed huge.
Okay, hold on a second. The number. Who determines the number? If you sell your house,
Not 13 million.
that's not what I'm asking. That's not what I'm asking. You're missing the point. If you're selling your house, do you determine the number? No, you don't. You hope. No.
Fire.
The market determines the value of your house. And what one person may seem huge, the market determines that. So if the number is huge everywhere, then what? If the number's huge everywhere. So recharging the battery, things like this, get me juiced up and get me going.
Well, there you have it. So if School X is offering $13 million, or say that they're needing $13 million, that's what James Franklin is saying essentially, is that whatever they need, we need if
Correct.
You want us to compete. Because everyone says that, okay, the Penn State reporters, who he was directly referring to, he was saying, all of you say that we need to come, without naming them himself. I think it was Corey Geiger mentioned Ohio State needs $13 million. Is that what Penn State needs? And James Franklin said, because of what everyone says, the fans, the reporters, whoever, critics, anybody, they say that in order for Penn State to compete, they have to be like Ohio State. Okay, so if Ohio State needs $13 million, then James Franklin is saying that, yes, to translate it, Penn State would need $13 million, if not more, because the market has said that college football teams, top programs, need $13 million.
Correct. And he's not wrong in anything he said.
No, I don't think so. There was a lot of coach speak, but I didn't hear anything where I was like, you know what, that's really off-putting. No.
Well, I think what can be off-putting is you hear the number being thrown around that schools need to get $13 million for players to play at their school. I think that's what's off-putting, but not in...
I don't balk at that number, to be honest.
His expectation, or I shouldn't say expectations, the bar he needs to set, he is correct in the fact that it needs to be just as much as the best schools in the country, because that's what... Okay, you still have to be a great recruiter. You still have to be personable, but the money talks. We're seeing it with the Live Golf Tour right now. How important the money is to those guys playing $150 million or $120 million for 8 tournaments. My question after that would have, and for any coach in the country, would be, number one, is that number realistic to obtain or to ask for? Number two would be, is it sustainable? Because
it's definitely not sustainable.
Year after year, there's going to be a correction here, and I just don't see the money flowing in the way it is right now. And maybe legislation will be a difference maker in the amount of money as well. But in terms of collectives, and especially places like Penn State, even Ohio State to a certain extent, you're asking that from donors mostly, not from big corporations. So that's where my question in sustainability comes from.
Yeah, I don't think it's sustainable at all. And again, the college football has no regulations, no competitive balance, nothing. But he's right about the market.
He's completely right with what he said. That's what they need to do to compete with these schools.
And that's why I look at, $13 million. I think somebody said it in the back. Well, that number was extreme. That number was ridiculous. Was it? NFL teams are able to spend almost $200 million a year.
Well, I think their question, though, was, again, the realistic part. Is that realistic for Penn State to be able to get to that number? I don't know. I think a lot of people in reality think Ohio State and Michigan has a better chance of reaching that number than a Penn State
Michigan
does.
And Columbus does have a lot of business ventures.
Correct.
They do. But yeah, there's a little bit of a Nike Penn State connection, but Nike's primarily going to go out and spend that money at Oregon.
Well, not even that. They also they have to satisfy all the schools that they have contracts with. You don't really want to go out on a limb and make preferential. Now, the size of your program, yes, you get more, your contracts are bigger, but you also don't want to peeve off other schools with how you're treating just one program.
I think this all goes back. I mean, $13 million on top of everything that a student athlete gets in terms of education comp. I mean, we forget that they get a $200,000 value in terms of education, room and board, food, and then you can't. Well, let's put a price tag. How about we start putting a price tag on nutritionists and the team doctors and the tutors if you're struggling in classes that you're already going to for free to get an education that will help you have a career if you can't make it in football. And now, but we need $13 million. I don't care what the number was. If it was $1 million, if it was $100 million, I think we're losing sight of everything that was. I mean, past these collectives, do I want student athletes to be able to go to said car dealership and say, please drive this car? I am spokesperson for this amazing car. Absolutely. But this thing where it turns into, hey, the schools are going to get a lump sum of change, and we're going to decide what position groups get how much hundreds of thousands, how much millions. I think Coach Day of Ohio State, Ryan Day, even broke it down further to say that, hey, this is what quarterbacks will need, $2 million. This is what running backs will need,
that's a contract.
$1 million. Yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm getting at. So on top of NIL, what it truly is and ethically is at, hey, Sean Clifford's at this Spikes game. That is awesome. He's signing autographs. He's getting compensated in some sort of way, okay? I don't know what his contract is with the Spikes or what his agreement is. That's not the point. But that's what NIL is supposed to be. Not the schools getting this lump sum of donations for Arkansas and Walmart, Oregon and Nike. That's not what it's meant to be. That's a salary cap, and you're allocating funds, and you're deciding, hey, which players. And then again, when does it get to, well, I should be making more because I'm the best in my position group, and you're going to get your first college holdout. You're going to get college holdouts.
It'll happen.
So that's what it's turning into, and the conversation's going to get deeper and more thorough. There's a lot to talk about over the summer. I think when we actually kick off, there's going to be too much to talk about for games, but as things continue to build up and the next domino falls, you're just going to get more interesting sound bites and conversations. And it is changing how recruiting's going. That's later on in the show. Coming up after the break, we have Penn State softball head coach Clarisa Crowell. We're also going to nominate our play of the game. We have our athlete of the week as well. Penn State Blue and White athlete of the week later on. It's Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joe Comfort Toyota and BMW right here on ESPN Radio.
Welcome back to Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Time for the guys to nominate the player of the game.
In this case here, it's going to be an athlete of the week. Can't really have a game in this sport competition, though.
Yeah, a very impressive performance by Tyler Merkley in the NCAA championships in Eugene, Oregon. The senior earned first-team All-American status, finishing runner-up in the hammer throw. He broke Morgan Shigo's school record of 72.7 meters. That's where his throw landed, just, I think, tenths of meters over the previous school record. It was the best finish for a Nittany Lion at an NCAA championship meet since Dane Rivers' indoor 800-meter championship in 2019.
This is Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Comfort Toyota, BMW, and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned. Joel Comfort Toyota, your local Toyota dealer for over 41 years, located at 120 East Clinton Avenue behind the Waffle Shop on North Atherton in State College. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. Penn State softball, what a turnaround to go from 7-33 the season before to 32-22 overall in the 2022 season. Penn State softball also had Clarisa Crowell, the head coach of the team, win the ECAC Coach of the Year award. And an absolute incredible feat, much deserving. And with that, we welcome on Coach Crowell on after an incredible season. Coach, thank you so much for your time.
Well, I appreciate you all having me and excited to talk about the great year that our program had.
Yeah, an appearance in the Big Ten tournament, a win in the Big Ten tournament, knocked out by the higher seed Nebraska. But we're going to focus on a lot of the positives, and I'm sure there were positives that came out of that game itself. But Matt, I will let you field the first question because the building blocks for the softball team, it was much bigger than just getting that shot in the Big Ten tournament. It started last offseason.
Yeah, I just find it so amazing that you look at the record from last year and you completely flip that around, turn it on its head with 32 wins and 22 losses, the largest increase in winning percentage actually in the country this year. I'm not sure if I'm sure you were aware of that, but what did it take to have such a turnaround this year for your program?
Yeah, I have to give a lot of credit to our student athletes first and foremost, and to our coaching staff. And obviously last year was a tough year for a lot of different reasons. But I really just think that our team, honestly, they just gelled well this year. And this year was different. Last year was our staff's first year. We came in during COVID, which was challenging in itself. And I think this year we were very intentional about building relationships with our student athletes and developing a positive camaraderie and a positive culture within the program. And I think we were able to do it. And I definitely think that it started there. This year, our student athletes knew the expectations. They knew the standards of the program. And I truly do feel that they were fully bought in. And, when they came back, we came back from summer, we had talked about obviously the previous year, but the focus was, what are we going to do this year? And they set goals for themselves and for the program. And fortunately, we actually exceeded the expectations that they set for themselves. And I think they worked really, really hard this year, not only on the field, but I think they worked really hard on just developing just a positive culture within our program. And I commend them for that because I do think that was a big part of it. And I tell you, when we got into season, I really attribute a lot of our success to their 1-0 mentality. And we definitely stole that one from Coach Franklin and his squad. But our kids, they went into every game believing in themselves and knowing that we could win. And that was it, and regardless of whether we won or whether we lost, they learned from things, and they really, truly continue to grow and get better throughout the course of the season. And so, again, a lot of credit to our student athletes and my coaching staff. I think did a really good job of getting them prepared for the competitive schedule that we played, both or obviously in conference and out of conference, but overall a very good year for our program, and I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, well, I have to ask that you said exceeded expectations. What were sort of your team's goals this year, and how they were able to exceed them? And even
right.
So you look at 2021, and obviously it wasn't the way anybody on a team would want a season like that. But how much the players returning and had that bad taste in their mouth, how much did that motivate them this year as well?
Oh, I think that was definitely a big part in it. And obviously when you set goals, right, you base it off of previous years, previous performance, and you have to be realistic with the goals that you set. And they came in saying, hey, we're going to make it to the postseason, which is we're going to get to the Big Ten tournament. We want to be 500. And another one was from a fielding standpoint, they wanted to be at 960, and for me, I'm a defensive-minded coach,
yep.
and I'm a firm believer, I say it all the time, that pitching and defense is what wins championships. And, so that was their goal. And then obviously we were 500, we made it to the Big Ten tournament, and we were well over 500 at that. And we were really close to getting into the NCAA tournament this year. You flip the script on a couple of games, 4 or 5 games, and we're getting into the tournament. So obviously that was huge for our program. Our program has not been there in several years, and but from a defensive standpoint, we ended up finishing second in the Big Ten with defense. And so to say our kids exceeded our expectations is I honestly think it's an understatement. And I think what they did this year was, they believed in themselves, and now where we're heading next year, it's going to be a lot of fun because we were just on the verge of getting into the tournament. Our RPI was the highest that it's been since 2011. We had a 30 win season, which we haven't done that in a while. And so there was just a lot of great things and a lot of positive momentum going into next year. And I know that they're excited about it. And I tell you, I'm excited about it as well. We have majority of the team coming back. We've got 3 of our seniors coming back with Bailey Partial, Kylie Langenfelter, and Lilia Krop-Hamill. And the sky's the limit for our program right now.
Coach C, Clarisa Crowell of Penn State softball, joins us here on Blue and White Breakdown. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. Coach, you started to mention a few of the names, Partial, Lindmark, Krop-Hamill. They earned all Big Ten honors. There were players that stepped up throughout the season. For example, Lexi Black with the walk-off hit in one of the biggest games of the season. What individually, and I know I named specifically just those few, but feel free to, I know you could go up and down the roster and say, hey, this is what they did well in practice on the field when we needed it most, but individually, what were some of those players able to do to help fuel this 30-plus win season?
Well, you got to start with Bailey Partial. Bailey was our ace. She had a phenomenal year. She was first team, all Big Ten, all region player. I mean, she was just fantastic for us, and we don't get the wins that we get without Bailey on the mound for us. So Bailey had a great year. Cassie Lindmark came in this year and was just fantastic. She was a transfer that came to us from Kentucky, led our team in nearly every offensive category, and her and Allie Curlin were the catalysts of our offense. Basically where those guys went, our offense went, but Allie Curlin also had a great year for us and really stepped it up, came up in big moments, and Lilia is our center fielder, and I tell you, there's some games we don't win if she's not in center field. I mean, in my opinion, I've said it, and I'm very confident in saying it. She is the best outfielder in our conference, and she was just remarkable out there this year. And what I thought our team did a really good job of this year is we came up in big moments, whether it was Lexi, Lexi came up in the clutch opportunity several times this year, or Maggie Finnegan was somebody else, and I'm thinking about Mel Coombs hitting that walk-off home run against a very good Maryland team this year. So I thought our kids did a really good job of when they had those big moments, they stepped up, and we won a lot of games because of that as well.
I got to ask specifically about Bailey because this year when we're nominating our player of the week on our show, multiple times Bailey comes up there. Obviously, the the perfect game against FIU on February 18th is that's the accomplishment of all accomplishments for a single pitcher. But what do you sort of remember from that outing? And also, I have to imagine just the mentality of your team is totally different when she steps out on the mound to start the game, and that it just gives your team confidence that you can win any game.
Yeah, for sure. And I think any team's going to say that about their ace. There's just something about your ace being out on the mound, and she gives the rest of our team confidence. And I tell you, Bailey, I've only been with Bailey now for 2 years. Obviously, last year was my first year, and I said it after that FIU game, and I've been saying it all year long. I think a big reason for her success is just her growth as a pitcher, her maturity as a pitcher, but just her mental toughness. I thought Bailey did a great job this year of just being resilient. Bailey, by nature, is a perfectionist. She's a type A type of kid, and I think early on in her career, she wanted the strikeout, she wanted to be perfect, but I think this year she really understood that that's not what pitching is, and in order for her to be an elite pitcher, which I do think Bailey was this year, she was okay with one pitch outs. She was okay if she didn't get the strikeouts. And I just think her toughness and her grittiness as a competitor really just excelled her game and turned her into an elite pitcher. And I can assure you that most people in the country don't want to face Bailey Partial. But all the credit to Bailey. Not only did she grow from a maturity standpoint and just her mentality, but she is somebody who puts everything that she has, and she's just got a great work ethic, and she works really, really hard at her craft, and she's also a student of the game. There's not going to be anybody else you're going to find out there that's going to watch as much film as Bailey watches. So, again, just a lot of credit to her, because obviously she had a fantastic year this year.
Head coach of Penn State softball, Clarisa Crowell, is on the line with us here on Blue and White Breakdown. The Big Ten tournament is obviously a huge accomplishment, beating Indiana and then getting knocked out by Nebraska. Was there a little bit of newness to this, since the program has not been in a postseason setting, like you said, in a little bit of a while? Do you think that this experience was humbling and ready, and it's going to help to prepare the team for the next time around and a season down the road with the players that will continue to be up and coming, because a lot of these players, they are back, but eventually they're going to have to move on. So do you think this was a good taste of the postseason to get them ready and to know what to expect come hopefully 1 year from now?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing like tournament time, and our student athletes, it's been a while since we've been there, and for them to have that experience at the tournament, I think was huge for us. And I, for us next year, we're not just thinking Big Ten tournament. We're definitely thinking well beyond that into NCAA regionals. And I believe in this team and believe that we've got the athletes to get us there. And our kids are confident. They believe in themselves, and that could, that's huge for any team. So I think our kids, and I think they handled it well. I thought they were composed, and I think that just kind of goes with how they've played all year. They never made moments too big. I do think at the start they were a little excited to be there, but once they settled in, I obviously we came up a little bit short, but Nebraska was a great team. I mean, they ended up winning. Yeah. They won the tournament, and they finished second in the Big Ten. So that was a team that they were pretty hot, and we just unfortunately just couldn't get it done. But a lot of great things that came out of that tournament, the experience, and just out of this entire year.
Yeah, and for those listening at home as well, the Big Ten this year did get 7 teams into the NCAA tournament, so just as impressive for the turnaround that Penn State was able to make this season. And sort of taking off of that success, you have the players coming back, like you mentioned, Bailey Partial, to lead this team, but you also have to build upon for the future, even years into after this upcoming season. What sort of have, without getting into specifics, but what sort of have the recruits responded to the turnaround from your team?
Oh, that's been huge. Any time, and especially as quick as our student athletes were able to do it. I'm not sure many people were expecting us to turn this thing around in a year. But again, our kids just believed that they could do it, and we did it. But yeah, it's been nothing but, from a recruiting standpoint, a lot of positive feedback. Just especially after the tournament. The tournament. I mean, we've had a lot of people kind of contacting us now. So yeah, from a recruiting standpoint, it's been fantastic.
Has it been a little bit, because Penn State baseball and softball have been a little bit of an afterthought in Happy Valley, I think, for a little bit now. So is there a sense of rewarding that, hey, we can turn Penn State into a softball school? Hey, we can get Penn State to, baseball's having an incredible season as well, to get the respect back for some of Penn State's spring sports? Is there anything rewarding and fulfilling in that regard?
Absolutely, and that's why I came here. I came here with the belief that we were going to turn this thing around, because I just saw Penn State as a great opportunity, and I'm here to put it on the national map. I mean, it's as simple as that. And so yes, absolutely. And I tell you, one of the best things about this year has just been the sense of pride that so many people have had in our program, and the support that our student athletes in our program have received this year has been truly amazing. So to see people, starting to follow us more, not just within our own fan base, but from a regional and a national standpoint, that's what we're here to do. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun for sure.
Last question, Coach C, that I have for you here on behalf of Blue and White Breakdown. What do you like the most about Penn State? I mean, obviously, you just mentioned the support there and what you enjoy about being within the softball program. But what else can you add on top of it that makes such a great experience in Happy Valley for you as a head coach?
Right. It's the people. My first year here, I didn't really get a chance to meet very many people because of COVID. But this past year, just having the opportunity to meet other coaches, to meet people in the department. And I think with any experience, the people are going to be what makes or break your experience. So the people here at Penn State have been awesome. And just the support that we receive from so many people, from our parents to our boosters to our donors to our alumni, have been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, the people, the Penn State family, it has been just great for our program, for our student athletes, and for our entire staff.
Ladies and gentlemen, Penn State softball head coach Clarisa Crowell joining us right here on Blue and White Breakdown. We hope we can catch up again sometime soon to talk about the progress of the program, the continued progress and success of it. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you having me, and we are.
Penn State softball head coach Clarisa Crowell joining us here on Blue and White Breakdown. We're going to step aside for just a moment. When we return, we have our play of the week. It's going to be a little retro. It's going to be a throwback. It's Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Comfort, Toyota, and BMW, and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned on State College's ESPN Radio.
It's time for the play of the game on Blue and White Breakdown.
Long and deep far side, reaches out, and juggles, got it, touchdown, Penn State!
Time-consuming effort, too. But now Blackledge is going to put it up on first down. He's going for the bundle. Garrity! Touchdown!
Big play in the championship game.
Yeah, the legendary Keith Jackson on the call there. Wow, that really, you hear that voice, and it just brings up all the obviously that memory there, a great one for Penn State fans, winning their first national championship, the 1982 national champions. Technically, though, the game played in 1983, because that is the only game played on January 1st that year. But Keith Jackson, you hear that voice and you just think of some of the greatest college football games of all time. But Greg Garrity sprinting down the left sideline, catching the ball in stride from Todd Blackledge on the play action fake, and pretty much set up by the day that Kurt Warner had 177 yards, outgained the Heisman Trophy winner Herschel Walker that year by over 70 yards in that game. and Penn State wins their first national title.
He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. It's Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Comfort Toyota and BMW and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned. Make Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned in Pleasant Gap your one-stop shop for your next vehicle purchase. Visit them today at 475 East College Avenue in Pleasant Gap, or go online to joelcomfortqualitypreowned.com. And you can get in on the conversation, 272-9625. That is 272-9625. Put the 814 in front of it. We're taking your phone calls. We want to hear from you, and we're going to bring Penn State football from the past now to the present to see if they can get back to that national championship setting. Later on in the show, we have our segment devoted to all Penn State sports. We're going to look at some of the updates and news across the Penn State sports landscape. We'll wrap up with around the Big Ten across the conference segment. And if you're just joining us, you missed out on our conversation about James Franklin and what he had to say about how much money Penn State would need from NIL to be able to compete with Ohio State. And in short, it's the same number that Ohio State would need without specifically saying it, as well as our interview with Coach Clarisa Crowell of Penn State softball. Again, Coach Crowell, we appreciate your time so much, and thank you for joining us. And that will be later. That will be up online on foreverstatecollege.com for any of you that missed it. Now, Penn State football in the present. This was a huge get for Penn State, a wide receiver that was originally committed to Rutgers, decommitted, and picked a better pasture. Yazeed Haynes committing to Penn State. He's a member of the class of 2023. He's a speedy wide receiver. He's a speedy athlete in general. He could play wide receiver or corner. I see him as a wide receiver, but there's more to his game than just him being fast.
Yeah, could play corner as well. He doesn't know the number 80 wide receiver in the 247 Sports Composite and number 17 in PA. The reason why I would think probably be a wide receiver too was it seemed like Marcus Stokes and him had a great connection at the Penn State whiteout camp just a week ago, and that is where Penn State ended up offering Yazeed Haynes because of his impressive performance. And I know Marcus Stokes tweeted out some things about Haynes and how good of a player he was, and obviously Marcus Stokes, class of 2024 quarterback coming to Penn State. So it just seemed like a good fit there for Penn State and possibly to be a future receiver with a lot of choices of talented quarterbacks to come.
Yeah, most definitely. And we have number 80 wide receiver from 24/7 Sports and 17 in Pennsylvania. But if you look at Rivals has him as a 4-star.
Yeah.
Rivals has him high up in the state of Pennsylvania. So depending on where you look, so this isn't they're just getting a depth piece, another scholarship to be used. This is a legitimate target that once Penn State knew they could get in on the conversation to get this guy closer to home, that's exactly what they did. And this kind of reminds me of, I'm not saying that Haynes is going to be a caliber player like Saquon Barkley, but Barkley had limited offers, chose the best of the bunch. Believe it or not, it can be Rutgers from time to time. But Penn State gets into the conversation.
Give credit where credit is due, though. Rutgers, especially last year, I don't know this year what their recruiting classes look like, but last year they had a very good recruiting class. I mean,
Greg Schiano knows too.
Greg Schiano knows
how to
the landscape.
Yeah.
So, but
it's just Penn State's still the bigger brother for Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean,
not sorry to say that.
You're comparing the two, and it's, if you think you're going to play at Penn State, it's a pretty easy choice between the two, in my opinion.
Well, and then that flips our conversation. Flip of the commitments. We have Haynes decommitting from Rutgers to come to Penn State. Now it's an eye for an eye. So everyone jokes and laughs and applauds Penn State when it happens to them in this manner. But Penn State losing out on a coveted offensive line commit. And when we say coveted, we mean so because Georgia, who's consistently a top 5 program, lands Joshua Doogie Miller, who's a 3-star interior offensive lineman from Virginia. I think he'll be a 4-star at some point, but committed early. He shut down his commitment. He was
107% committed.
Yeah. So I know.
They're high school kids,
They're 16, 17. I totally get it. But he probably didn't think that. When I went back to his social media and I said, interesting how you had this Georgia offer come in late as of a month ago, and then you change your mind. I get it. It stings a little bit.
Well, and I sort of see it as I think it confirms the fact where Penn State has done, by him going to Georgia, it confirms the fact that Penn State has done a good job of rising talent on their board, seeing talent early, maybe not necessarily starting off as a 4-star. As you mentioned, you think he'll end up there. He's a 3-star now, but he's already shot up the board, and especially with getting the offer from Georgia. He received that offer on May 7th, said he was thinking about taking his official visit with Penn State, but ultimately didn't want to waste their time. And I think what it really came down to was, Georgia's the top-of-the-line program. He sort of said as much, and Kirby Smart and what they had to offer was the selling point for him, just all the prestige that goes with going to Georgia.
Now, the 2023 recruiting rankings look pretty good after Haynes came in, but then you have to factor in the number, given that Joshua Miller is no longer with the team. So these are the 2023 class
still
rankings.
Top 5.
Yes.
Top 5 still.
Number 1 is Notre Dame. Number 2, Texas Tech. Number 3, Cincinnati. Number 4, who we all have to worry about in the Big Ten, the Northwestern Wildcats. Penn State at 5, Ohio State at 6. These will obviously change in the coming months as Alabama, Georgia, the rest of them get further involved. The reason I want to point this out real quick, Texas Tech and Cincinnati and Northwestern, the reason they're at 2, 3, and 4 is because they have about 15, 16, 17 3-star recruits.
Yeah, they're basically right around their cap already of what they can bring in. So that'll, obviously it's still a good recruiting class especially when you look at Northwestern to be up there. To get that many 3-stars for Northwestern is a good haul, but they will start trending further down that list because of the bigger names now starting to make some of their decisions in the 4- and 5-star recruits.
And that's just it. Ohio State has 9 4-star commitments. They're number 6. The second they get another recruit, they'll probably shoot up to number 2. Notre Dame actually has 12 4-star commits currently.
3 5-stars.
Depending on where you look. And Penn State has 1 5-star in Alex Birchmeyer, who actually said that he's going to enroll early in January 2023. So he's all 107% in. There's no questioning his commitment. And then they have about 6 4-star recruits wherever you look. So these rankings will change. I think Penn State's solidly in the top 10 when all said and done.
That, and I think important about this year, yes, it hurts to lose Joshua Miller, but despite losing him, they have some real high-quality offensive linemen, and that is the position that Penn State really needs to keep pounding and needs to hit on their offensive line recruits.
Yeah, they have 3 in that class, and I think this actually opens up a spot for. I think Michael Dincher is a good prospect just down the road at State College High School.
There's some high quality offensive line. I think Michael Dincher is a good offensive lineman, but I'm talking 4- and 5-star offensive linemen out there that still have Penn State on their radar. So I would keep your eyes glued on that portion as well.
I'm a fan of the hometown story. I like Keaton Ellis doing what he's doing. Hopefully he gets more playing time this year, battled some injuries. But anytime there you can get that state high pipeline to Penn State, it's really neat to see. We'll finish with this. The people that are protecting for this guy, Marcus Stokes, selected to compete in the Elite 11 finals.
Yeah, he's the 4th Penn State commit to be selected. It is a prestigious honor. It is them recognizing that they are the best 11 quarterbacks in the recruiting class, and you get some high-quality coaching to go with it. The others were Sean Clifford, Drew Aller, and Christian Hackenberg, the others to be nominated.
And a very important class of talent right there. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. It's Blue and White Breakdown. When we come back, we're going to have our Across the Conference segment and look at other Penn State sports and all the news that comes with it. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio.
This is Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. It's now time to look across the conference and see where Penn State stands in the Big Ten. Across the Conference is sponsored by Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. You don't need to leave Happy Valley for a great getaway. Plan your staycation today. Visit the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for day trip ideas.
He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. It's Blue and White Breakdown. Interesting comments coming from the Indiana athletic director.
Yeah, just that he's, I think this is something that he wouldn't be the only one to say this. We've sort of heard James Franklin allude to maybe a shakeup, not necessarily this, but in favor of getting rid of the conferences and not the conferences, the divisions in the Big Ten for football.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's just you can't. Okay, so how the East is ranked, I was going to say you can't have the same team winning the conference every year, but Ohio State still does it on the East. But that's with the tougher competition. Just when you look at the West, Wisconsin, it's other than Northwestern sprinkled in there. It's just been Wisconsin's division, and Iowa. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem fair that Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State, who are year in, year out pretty much considered, I mean, and you would put Wisconsin in there, the best teams in the Big Ten, to have them on the same side. It would be nice to just sort of see shakeup in the who you play every year.
I'm totally for it, because if you take, how would this be? Well, it would be like the Big 12, where the Big 12 takes the top two teams and has them play in the conference championship. So you could get an Ohio State Penn State Big Ten championship, hypothetically. You could get an Ohio State Michigan Big Ten championship, hypothetically. You could get Penn State Wisconsin again, Penn State Iowa. It really doesn't matter. Michigan State. I mean, these are all good combinations, and because they all have to knock each other out in the same division, they can't do that.
Yeah, but the only thing, especially as a Penn State fan, that you would say is, because are they going to? They're probably not going to make it a guarantee that Penn State plays Ohio State every year. That's not a game they're going to protect. So as a Penn State fan, you want to play Ohio State and some of those teams every year. So that's the downside of it, is because of the overall number in the Big Ten, you're just not guaranteed some of those games that maybe you want to see every year.
I'm also for the fact that you get a better rotation of games. So, yes, you will lose out on Penn State, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, possibly from time to time. I think the Big Ten will respect those games. You mean to tell me they're going to do away with Michigan State because it's not in the rotation this year?
Michigan and Michigan State, I think, would be a protected
and Michigan,
rivalry.
Ohio State?
Yeah, well, obviously.
So
I mean, that's the big...
Exactly. So I think...
But who would they designate for Penn State as a... You get into...
Michigan State would definitely be one.
You get into murkier waters, though, when you're saying
Maryland.
we gotta come up with all these parameters. So I see logistically why. I mean, it's obviously a lot easier for the Big 12 to put that into practice with the less teams they have in their conference.
And to finish the show today, we are going to look at the other Penn State sports. Nobody really in action right now, but congratulations to two former Penn State women's volleyball players, actually, Allie Franti and Kendall White, helping Team USA go 3-1 in the first week of the VNL in Louisiana. And now the team is headed to the Philippines for 2 weeks, starting Wednesday. So that's a little bit of breaking news about 30 minutes ago, and it's something exciting to share.
Yeah, and then we've seen year after year Penn State volleyball players have a lot of success at the national level, so that's no surprise to see Penn Staters continue to do that.
Penn State men's basketball picked up a transfer in Michael Henn. He's coming to Penn State. He's a forward.
Played for a couple of teams.
Yeah, he's played for a few of them. Most recently at Denver, but had stops at Portland, Cal Baptist, and UC Davis. 8.8 points per game. He also had interest from Illinois and Notre Dame, so he was coveted. This isn't a guy that's just, but he is going to have a role. This is not a replacement for John Hara. Let me say that right now. This is not a replacement for John. Oh, he's 1 inch shorter. Doesn't matter. He's a different kind of play. He's a shooter, actually.
Yeah, and he'll compete for a starting position. I don't know. Again, it also depends on Mahaffey and Keba, how they performed for the starting role. It's tough for a freshman to come in right away, but he provides a veteran presence, and you just look at Penn State's roster, and I see it more going to you're not really going to have a traditional center on this team this year. And I think just in general, the makeup of how Micah Shrewsbury wants to play, there's going to be a lot of interchangeable positions, and you see that across the NCAA.
Giovanni Scott is no longer with the team. We don't know what his next move is, but he was academically ineligible when the season began.
Last year academically ineligible, only played 11 games, 1.4 points per game. Not sure if that's what came into play here. It seemed like he just struggled to fit in within the program. So I don't know what's next for him, if he's transferring out or if he's just going to stay in school. But regardless, I think you see Michael Henn as an upgrade here in terms of forwards, just because of the experience that he has. Illinois and Notre Dame, I would like to note that they were interested in the reason why they didn't go with him. They sort of got their number one choices from both Notre Dame and Illinois. But nonetheless, he's still on their radar. So it's a depth piece for Penn State. Again, he's not going to be a star, but he fits into what they're trying to do, it seems like.
The Lady Lions, Kelly Mazzanti, selected to the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame. We had her on Sports Talk with Steve Jones today. Just what an incredible accomplishment.
Talk about a scorer. Number 3 all-time in the Big Ten, and that includes male and female players. Wow. With just a hair under 3,000 points, 2,919. It brings back some of the best Penn State women's basketball teams we've seen, 2003 and 2004, back-to-back Big Ten champs. They also made it to the Elite 8 in 2004 as the number 1 seed. The team they fell to, surprisingly, was lower seeded in UConn that year, was the number 2 seed. But as we know,
Gino.
UConn pulls out their magic when it matters. But just some really successful teams for Penn State there. Kelly Mazzanti, she was a shooter. She, I think, hit 9 3-pointers in a Big Ten tournament game. Went on to play in the WNBA and was just promoted to associate head coach at Bucknell.
Penn State men's lacrosse, a former 5-star recruit, Chase Mullins, is transferring to Penn State, and we know that they need all the help they can get. A little bit of a down year.
Yeah. Midfield transfer from UNC, played in just 3 games last year, was the number 1 face-off recruit in 2021, and the Under Armour senior game MVP. Important there because Penn State just won 43% of their face-offs last year, and as you said, down year.
And hopefully we'll see that number go up as well. How about Penn State track and field to finish the show? The men's 4x400 relay team of James Onwuka, Corbin Martino, Savion Hebron, and Olivier Desmelis placed 21st. Yasmin Brooks, 19th in the 100-meter hurdles. Madison Smith, 17th in javelin. And Mallory Kaufman, 19th in discus.
Yeah, and that comes off of a pretty successful indoor track season for Penn State as well. So you see them sprinkle in some very individual athletes that perform at a high level, and obviously Tyler Merkley with the runner-up in the hammer throw.
And something we didn't get to, Penn State wrestling and all the success, David Taylor, Mark Hall, the rest of them. We're going to talk about that more next week, including an injury that could affect the Penn State wrestling lineup going into the fall and winter.
You can bleed blue and white every Monday at 5 p.m. with Matt and Zach on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Thanks for listening to Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW.